All right, thanks again. So it was an average school day in the fall of 2013 when I walked back to my classroom to find a woman standing outside my door, and she was looking around. And as I approached her, she turned and said, "Did you know that you have a purple bubble around your space?" And I said, "No, I guess I didn't." And she said, "Soon then." Well, she went on to tell me that she had followed a group of crows who had directed her to our school that day, and that she was grateful that she did. She said, "I'm familiar with these spaces, I've worked in this school, I've worked with these very same students, and something feels different here. I like it. I like the way the students feel. The space feels different. I want to know exactly what's going on." I'm still not sure who she was. I said, I guess we're just doing some good work together, my students and I, is all. Very well. Well, whatever it is, it needs to extend beyond these four walls. I'm a marriage and family counselor. I'm a crisis intervention team director and a mental health provider. And I work with students in the juvenile judicial system. And whatever's happening here, those students, they're not ready to learn. I need them to get available to learn. So I'll tell you what to do. Come up with a 10-week program. I'm going to shop around for it to get it funded, and then be in touch. We'll go from there. Thank you so much for letting me be in your space today. So it was also quick, right? That I'm like, "You're welcome." And so as she's leaving, she turns and says, "It's a funny thing about those crows. They never lead me astray." And I said, "Well, I just imagine they wouldn't, you know." And so what that was for me, what that turned out to be, that interaction, was an invitation for deep reflection on what exactly it was my students and I were doing together, what was the good work we were doing together, and how was that impacting the experience around us. And so I sat with that. I sat with that. And I sat with my own experience, I sat with my experience with my students, and what I realized is there was a call for deep presence, and that is one of the most important things that I could identify that my students and I had uncovered together. A call for deep presence in the way of being with one another. Our students are expressing their needs at all times. We all are, actually, in communication. We're expressing our needs through our communication. However, most of us are not taught how to do that in a way that will get those needs met. So our students will do it often through their behavior, right? And then with the pressures put on teachers, we don't always have the ears to listen, or turned on to listen to what that need might be that's being expressed through that major disruption or even a minor disruption. Even today, schools and university teacher training programs are not training teachers on how to regulate their own emotions as students act out theirs. What we are taught to do is to manage behavior. And so when through behavior modification, or we're taught, like, what's an appropriate consequence for this behavior, and to whom should we send this student to deal with this, right? So let's think about behavior. When I hear misbehave, right, if you look this up, it says, is a verb of of an adult, especially a child, it says, who fails to conduct themselves in a way that is acceptable to others. That's a problem, right? To behave badly, right? What I have learned through my interactions with my students is something different about misbehavior. For me, the way I define misbehavior, the way I respond to it, I define it as misbehavior is pain being expressed inappropriately, with inappropriately being defined as not healing for the person expressing the pain, and not healing for the person to whom the pain is being expressed. That opens up a different place in me, and I don't think about managing that child, right? I think about what we need to uncover together through the way we are with one another. I do this by listening for the invitations. My students have taught me this over the year, and what I've learned that there are always two, at least. One invitation is for connection. One invitation is for disconnection. Through deep presence, whether it be if we develop a mindfulness practice, which I encourage mindfulness in schools, through deep presence, we're able to begin to recognize those invitations, what's there, and then be conscious in how we choose to respond. I had a student one time who went to lunch, and she saved a spot for her favorite friend to sit down beside her. And she fought for that spot. She didn't just save it. She put her leg up, fought for it so no one else could sit there. When the friend came out, she said, "I saved you a spot. Come and sit down." And the friend said, the peer, maybe not a friend, the peer said, "No, let's sit by you." And everybody laughed, right? So my student says, "Well, you're a witch." minus the W plus the B, okay? And so the support staff sends her up to my room to deal with her behavior, right? And so she comes to me and I said, did you call her a witch? No, I never said that before, ever, but never really said that. And I said, well, I think you did. I'm like, and it's okay, you can tell me. No, I never said that once before. I noticed an invitation there, something triggered in me. It's called my ego, right? I was being lied to, right? And so I could respond from that place. And what kind of consequence could I set there, right? Maybe to have her eat lunch in the office for the rest of the week for lying to me. She shouldn't be lying to me. I'm her teacher. Luckily, I didn't respond to that invitation. In fact, I politely declined it. The invitation I did respond to was one for connection. So when she said to me, no, I've never said that before in my life, I said, I know it's so hard right now to do it, but if you can look at me, I'm asking you to do it. I said, you are so safe with me, and I hope that you can feel that. I said, I don't even care about the truth of what happened there. What I care about is you. What I care about is this relationship that we share. And what I know is that this relationship will feel satisfying to us if we can be honest with one another. That's the only reason I asked. What I think the honest truth is about what happened here is that you saved that seat for that little girl and you wanted her to sit beside you so badly. And when she didn't, and when she said she didn't want to sit by the likes of you, and everybody laughed, I think it hurt your feelings. No, it didn't hurt my feelings, she said. It didn't hurt my feelings. And I said, do those girls sometimes hurt people's feelings? Well, sometimes I guess they hurt people's feelings. I said, I think you're right, and I think those girls hurt your feelings today. They hurt my feelings, right? And so she burst into tears, right? And she falls apart right there, puts her head down, and she sobs, and I let her sob, right? There was a great pain, and she added, she said, they hurt my feelings, and I'm sick and tired of dealing with this. I've dealt with this since first grade. I have no friends, right? And so she sobbed and sobbed, and I sat in presence with her and let her purge the big pain that she'd been carrying around for those last 5 years. And then when there was a greater availability, having released some of that, we had discussions about what might her needs and feelings be around that experience. We even guessed at what the needs and feelings would be with the other students in that experience. And so through that, we were able to arrive at a greater place of compassion and a different way to respond when those feelings arise in us. That was done through something that I've also learned with the kids is trying to create safety in every moment. Safety in how I respond to them. One way I'll do that is I'll listen to myself as I speak to them. Because what I have noticed is that almost everything I'm saying to them, largely it's for me, but two, there's some conditioning there that I want to be very conscious of. So when I'm responding to a certain behavior or something that they've said to me, I want to be conscious of how I respond to them and make sure it's my clean and clear voice that they're hearing. So when I respond in a way, I will pause and see who is speaking here. When I was spoken to in the that I felt, how did I feel, right? What did it create when I was spoken to in this way? And what did it do for our relationship, or what did it not do? And so I want to be very conscious of that with the students. And I can't do that always in the moment, right? But I will create the time for that. There's a big issue of time in our schools. There's a lot of talk about there's not time for these things. I'm telling you there is absolutely the need for time that has to be created. It will save so much time. What I have found is that doing things like this will reduce the duration of outbursts, of tantrum-like behavior, of shutdowns, of things of this nature. There is time for it. There was a student in our school, been there 2 weeks before, and I did not know him, but somebody came and said, he's misbehaving, he's throwing everything, he's not doing his work, right? 2 weeks the child had been there. And so talked to him, and then when I found out in that short talk with him, is right before school he had just been adopted or put into foster care, taken from his mother, put into foster care with another family, a new family, and started a new school where he knew no one. What do we expect would happen there except for misbehavior, right? Without the language to communicate how deeply traumatic that is. And so through that interaction, I tuned in to the feeling there that I recognized in him and the need that he wasn't able to quite express. And so I sat with him and I said, I open my classroom sometimes at lunch. If there's somebody you think you might want to make a friend with, why don't you invite them in and we can have lunch with them and they can be in our space and I'll show you all the things we do in there. And so he's done that. And so this little boy, though, it was not a behavior problem, this little boy, through this interaction, was able to then get his work done, keep his head up, right? Respond, make friends. He's a vibrant little being who runs around our school. And that interaction, when I talk about time, 2 weeks of instruction was missed. I had a conversation with him for about 15 minutes to find out what was going on. And then we came up with something that could make him feel safe. So safety in every moment is what we're going after there. When we encounter resistance, there's something there to be had and to be felt, to be seen, to be understood. I approach resistance, I try to listen for that invitation to raise curiosity and creativity when resistance comes up. So, for example, in a mindfulness lesson with my student, whenever he says, this is stupid and I'm not doing it, right? The resistance was there. I could either set a consequence for him, have him removed or something. But what I wanted to do, and what I did, is respond with curiosity and creativity. Because what I have learned in my own life is that I am often most resistant to the one thing that I need the most, right? To the one thing that might help me the most. This kid who was talking about this just happened to be my most impulsive kid, who was kicked out of his regular ed classes often. And so we got creative and we started, and I said, because he lived for recess, loved it. And so I said, hey buddy, I was like, how about you and I, 30 seconds closed eye meditation, extra minute of recess, deal? Yeah, okay. So, So we did that, and then we ended up going back to 5 seconds, to 10 seconds, to 20 seconds, right? And he said, I feel like I'm crawling out of my body. And when he did, we explored that, right? With curiosity, where in your body do you feel that? What does it feel like? Can you begin to name it? And as he began to watch it, he began to grow up his capacity to be with himself, right? He began to grow up his capacity to notice the invitations of his own that were coming up that he was so often just blazing through and reacting to through impulsive behavior. What happened with him is he was able to return to his regular classroom, participate more for longer durations of time in the classroom with his peers, and have a greater education through that. Constructing identities is something I want to strongly encourage in whatever capacity we work with anybody or are in relationship to anybody. Our children are building their identities right before our eyes. They're building their identities and they're building their memories, and we get to participate in that. Think about that. That is a precious gift that's been bestowed on us to participate in someone's memories. It is a grand responsibility. And so when I'm with them, I watch them build their little identities, right? And mostly I just take joy in it. But I do make a special effort to interrupt identities that don't support their wholeness. If I see a kid in a process, I'll sit with them all day, right? We can get through the process. If I watch you in a pattern, patience is going to wear, right? I'm not going to sit for that for very long, right? So we're going to interrupt some patterns there. And this was from something that I needed in my own childhood. There's this picture here of a school. I've marked safe, danger, danger. As a child of being a queer kid in a conservative school, recess was terrifying. So I stood right here where I could see where everybody was. No one could hurt me that way, right? Because I could run if they came towards me. But somebody did come towards me and I missed it. I still don't know how I missed it. Came towards me and ran at me and hit me so hard in my arm that I thought it had broken. I'd never been punched that way, right? And so he punched me and I gasped and but I couldn't say, I had to say face, right? I couldn't respond to the way my body was asking for the response to, or the response my body was requesting, right? And so I tried to laugh it off and I just tried to laugh it off and I'm just going to go back inside now, right? And I did, right? And so when I went back into class, I had a test coming up next. And so when I sat down to take that test, I, who had always been a pretty good student, very kind in school, wrote F this across my test and flipped to the desk, right? Is that who I was? Right? Or was that who I was responding to something that had happened, right? And without the ability to express those feelings, I built something, an identity that day. I swallowed something that day, and I watched for my children to make sure that they don't swallow the same type of things. There's a great lie of our time that we are unworthy, that we are not enough. It is the great poison of our time, and we're invited to drink it all the time. In that moment, I drank it, and it took me years to unpack it. Still working on it to be truthful. in that moment, I swallowed a belief that I was not worthy of being safe, that there was something wrong with me, that they were right, me playing with dolls and being effeminate, like it was absolutely not okay, and I was not worthy of safety, right? It took, so I watched that with my students. I want to be very conscious about the identities they build. When one of my students came back with his behavior log from being in his class, and it said that he had said something on there. He was a good-hearted, wonderful kid, and he came in, and what they had written that he had said was so vulgar, I won't repeat it, but it took my, I'd never heard anything like that from him. So he came in, and he's like, I'm like, oh, buddy, come in. It can't be that bad. Let me see, what is it? So he hands me his point sheet, right? Hands it to me, and I look, and I didn't mean to shame him. I'll tell you right now as I'm standing here. It just kind of caught me off guard. And so I looked, and I was like, you know, to which he said, I know, it was really bad. It was really bad, I know. And I watched him gulp and gulp, and I said, no. I was like, don't you do that, don't you swallow that. I was like, that is poison, and don't you swallow, you spit it out. I said, honey, this is something that you did. It is not something that you are. I know your heart, right? I know your heart. This is something that you did. It is not something that you are. Do not get this confused, and we can learn from this, you know. And so we did. I watched their identities. I tried to create opportunities for them to be celebrated, to have people in their family celebrated and recognized. We go around sharing those with students, create special opportunities, things that are important for him. And I've got a video of him saying, this is the best day of my life. And so, and that's what I love. That's a memory I love that we're creating. Power of reflection. I want my students to be able to reflect why, one, for the information it will provide them, that they can tune in to the big power that they have that's available to them at all times. The power that we don't talk about, right? No one told me in that moment, or when I was being bullied or something in school, no one told me you have power that these people can't touch, right? And so I want to make sure I do that with my students. We do an activity called You Probably Didn't Know. And so you probably didn't know. This activity, we go through a guided meditation, and what I am trying to get through this is I want them to honor that they have been seen, but they don't really have the language always to go through and talk about, like if I say, like, tell me about a time you've been seen. That's difficult at times for them, and it's a little bit too personal, too vulnerable. And so we go into meditation, and we talk about, and I say, you know, imagine a time when you felt safe and loved, or cared for, or supported, or just really excited. And I'll say, let your mind go back a little bit and take a look to see who was involved in that experience with you, and how did they contribute to the feelings that you had that day. How were they using their energy in a way that contributed to that feeling? And when they come out, then we take a moment and we write down on a letter, you probably didn't know that when you blank, I felt blank. And then we write a thank you and we send that out. Here are some examples. Dear Mr. G, you probably didn't know that when you taught me how to do math, it made me feel like I belong in this scary world. And that gets me because I know the scary world that he was living in at the time, and anything that can make him feel safe in a scary world, I was very happy about. This one right here, tune into this part. This is the third grader. These children, they have the ability to reflect and to learn from their reflection, and I tell you they're not given time in schools. I'm in schools every day. They are not invited to tune into their own information. It is about teaching something and them saying it back, maybe explore their own thinking through that particular subject, but coming in and being invited to share something that they have learned along their journey, I can't recognize when it happens if it is. I love this part. Miss Arnold, you treated me better than I treated you. I want to say I'm sorry for not giving you more respect. I know you have always been there for me. Third grade child could reflect and do this. I did not coach him. I do not prompt them beyond thinking about a time. No prompting. Didn't have to be school. I asked him to think about a time when he felt safe. He said, you probably didn't know this, but when you gave me those tree nuts when I was hungry that morning, it made me feel like there was no other teacher like you. You were like some super teacher. Most teachers would have said, sorry you're hungry, but you cared for my hunger, and caring is a true superpower, right? When he sent this, recognize that as an invitation for connection, right? This child who gives such grief to that teacher, you know, in resisting everything that she's trying to teach him. In that moment, there was an invitation for connection, and she met him there, and their relationship began to improve. And they were able to recognize when we're seen, okay? And so, because you can't do this activity without honoring that you've been seen, whether you consciously do it or not. Perhaps the most touching one for me, I worked with a group of students, and one of the students, he was in a gang, really tough exterior, right? And his whole positioning was, I don't care, I don't give about anything or anybody, right? And so we did this activity. When I did it, all the kids in the middle school, they talked about an elementary school experience. But the problems they were having were in middle school. So let's go back in our memory. Let's do this through middle school experience. And he was like, no, F that, forget it. There's nobody, I don't trust them, I'm not doing it. And I said, well, come on, in 2 years you've been there. No one's shown you a moment of kindness. Give me one, just go in briefly. And if it doesn't work out, we'll come right back out. And so before we could even finish the meditation, he came out and he said, I got it. He was like, Mr. Haglund. And he said, Mr. Haglund, when the other teachers found out I was part of a gang, I felt that they treated me rudely, but you didn't. You treated me with kindness and respect. You probably didn't know that when you said, if you need anything, you can come to me, that I believed you. You probably didn't know that I believed you. Let me tell you about this student. After this, we give them all stationery and colorful Sharpies, and I hand them the box of Sharpies to pick from, and they write this letter to their teacher, or whoever it is they pick. This student who doesn't care about anything, as he says, right? When I came around with the Sharpies, he said to himself, I wonder what his favorite color is, right? That's huge. It's a testimony to when they're held in safety, when they're held in love, when each of us is held in safety and in love, we care so much, down to the color of the pen that we're writing to the person that's going to receive it, what their favorite color might be. I talk with my students about sharing their power, about keeping their power. We don't talk about behavior in our room. We talk about how we use our energy. Do we use our energies in ways that serve us or in ways that don't serve us? I don't decide it for them. They're the ones that decide it. And then we explore from there if we want to continue to create that experience or if that's an experience we want to change for ourselves. And then we explore the ways to do that. I encourage them, keep your power, share it. Share it, but don't give it away. And watch for opportunities when you're invited to. I'm going to move through this to get us through. Right here, one of my students, haha, you ugly. Right here, my power belongs to me, right? He wasn't touching her that day. Gifting what we needed. What I encourage is for all of us, through deep presence, deep reflection, to tune in and tune into our experience and gift and figure out what was it that we needed in a time that we felt safe and loved and supported. What did we need, and how may we begin to gift that to the people that we're interacting with? Our students will benefit from that. It will be healing for us, I know from experience. There was a teacher in my life who, at a time where I didn't feel it was safe to be seen, because when I was seen, I was met with persecution. I was spit on, beaten in schools, right? And it communicated to me it was not safe to be seen. But there was one teacher who did something so simple. All she did was ask me, how are you? But it wasn't about her words. It never is. It was about the place from which she was operating. It was the energy with which she was speaking to me. I felt that, right? And even though I couldn't receive it right then, it stuck with me. And when I interact with my students, I make sure that I'm operating from that place, that they will feel the energy with which I speak. When I say to them, you are precious and good. I want that to be felt deeply in them. When I say to them, you are safe with me, it is safe to show up who and how you are, right? When I celebrate them, I want that to be with the energy that they can feel. It's a powerful way of being, and it will have a positive impact on our students. What might the effects be? I can tell you what they are, what I've seen through data I've collected myself and in my classroom. I've seen students improve their academic performance, go from 4th grade not knowing their letter sounds, to 6th grade reading 88 words per minute, still below grade level, but a huge jump from not knowing letter sounds at all. I've seen improved student behavior to where they can go and return to their classrooms, improved attendance, showing up more because they feel safer there and there's a place for them to be. Increased time in their regular classrooms. We have a behavior unit, and so increased times back there. More meaningful relationships. And their talents and gifts become more evident because it becomes a safe place for them to share them. Students showing up is what will happen. Showing up in ways that they didn't know they could. Showing up in ways I didn't know they could, right? What an exciting time that is to explore and expand and work together to create this possibility space of what is possible for me. That's a privilege we have as teachers, and that's a privilege I take very seriously. Navigating our own powerful journeys, however you reimagine learning in whatever setting you do, I hope that we can be conscious of the memories we make with others through mindfulness and mindful practices. There is a call for deep reflection and a call for presence and to tune into our own inner resources. Our students need it, we need it. That is my intention for us. May we restore connection and remain connected to our wholeness through restorative practices. Instead of punishment, may we get rid of that whole idea, and may we begin to work with restorative practices to repair relationships not only with anyone who may be hurt, but with ourselves. Restore that connection to our wholeness. And may our greatest measure of success ever be the amount of compassion that we're able to offer ourselves and to others in any given moment. Those are my wishes for us today, and I appreciate, and one more. May you always follow the crows. All right, thanks so much, appreciate it.